The Dogman with the thing in his hand. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a weird Dogman story for you. This wasn't a Dogman that saved my family from a fire. This wasn't a Dogman that served as a heroic role model to my children or whatever else. This was an old school Dogman who showed up in a bad mood and demonstrated great annoyance at our presence. He scared the daylights out of me and my then girlfriend, and she admitted to me years later that she actually left me because she felt that I was what attracted the Dogman to our camp. She didn't ever want to run into a creature like that again, so she dumped me. The weirdest part is I've never seen a Dogman again, but she admitted to me on either Facebook or MySpace or maybe LiveJournal or something back 10 or 20 years ago that she had another bad experience with a similar cryptid creature, another Dogman, about 5 years after our encounter. So maybe she was the one who drew him into our camp. This is a Michigan Dogman story, although neither of us knew about the Michigan Dogman in those days, which would have been the early 1980s. The legend of the Animal Man was already strong in the region for a long time, as I learned later, but she and I were unfamiliar with any of these stories or sightings. Marcy, not her real name, had moved in with me, and we got a terrible apartment that we didn't like at all. We were given an old mid-60s Ford station wagon by our uncle that we took the back seats out of. Then we put down this futon mattress kind of thing, and we could sleep in the back. This was the kind of station wagon where you opened the back and it extended it out further, so we were very comfortable sleeping in there on warm, dry nights. We found places where we could do what we called going camping. That consisted of buying some fast food or making sandwiches, then driving off into the woods to one of the narrow forest paths that we knew about. We could park out of the way of everything and everyone, open the back up, and just enjoy ourselves all night in nature in our portable bedroom, or metal tent as we called it. That station wagon was like our makeshift RV in those days. We got lucky in that we never ran into any psycho lunatics wandering through the forest at night. But we got unlucky one night when we were found out by this weird and angry Dogman. Marcy and I were eating KFC, and I remember that part specifically. We had bought a bucket, which I had never done before. It had been a life's goal of mine to buy a whole bucket of KFC, and as we were about to learn, it was the life's goal of a certain nearby cryptid to eat a whole bucket of the Colonel's crunchy concoction too. I think we were on our first or second pieces, not having eaten that long, when this tall, upright, two-legged version of a dog or wolf was suddenly right outside our open back hatch, bending over to lean down and glare in at us. The first thing I noticed was that his eyes appeared to be some sort of special effect, performed live. I mean, they didn't just glow. This wasn't normal eye shine. His eyes were bright enough that I didn't want to look at them. They hurt to be seen, and they made it harder to make out the details of his face. His silhouette was clear, and that was the silhouette of what your channel tends to talk a lot about, aka the Dogman. This was not a super muscular Dogman, nor was it crazy tall either. It seemed bigger than I was, I'll say that, and I'm 6'2". So this was a healthy-sized, clearly male example of some species of bipedal animal that strongly resembled a few canine species. I want to call it a mammal, but marsupials also have hair or fur, right? And there used to be a marsupial that looked just like a dog, didn't there? I think it survived into the 20th century before going extinct. So the creature we saw might have been a large upright walking marsupial. Kangaroos are marsupials and they can be as taller than a man. If a kangaroo ran instead of hopping, it wouldn't look that much different from what we had looking at us that night. Put a head more like a giant prehistoric wolf on that kangaroo's shoulders, make the fur a little shaggier, and you would be in the neighborhood of this unhappy-looking fellow. Needless to say, Marcy and I were pretty unhappy about this situation. We both sort of pulled our feet back into the station wagon and backed up as far as we could from the creature, then moved back and forth, staring at us like it was thinking of adding us to its bug collection under glass. It was unnerving to be treated like an animal by, well, an animal. The creature reached its arm inside the station wagon and Marcy threw a piece of chicken at it. That distracted the creature as it picked the piece up off the ground and devoured it. After some time, which felt like 18 years but might have been half a minute, I noticed that the creature seemed to be holding something in its left fist. Oh, it had hands, not paws like a dog or a wolf. The hands were not really like human hands, though. They were more like chimpanzee hands. The fingers wrapped around this object, but I'm not sure where the thumb was or if it even had a thumb. The object in its hands had an odd shape, and Marcy and I never really decided what we thought that thing was. You could sorta say it was shaped like a Charms blow pop, except with a much thicker stem. It was uniformly dark gray all over, and might have been made of a dull-colored metal, or maybe even stone. It could have been a man-made object, it was hard to tell. As the creature seemed to finish studying us, it began to sort of yell at us and gesture. It seemed to be saying that we should go away. Marcy whispered to me to get in the front seat and drive away, slowly. I started to get up to do just that, and the dogman seemed extremely threatened by my movement. He took a few steps back, shouting at us in his way that sounded like my father when he was angry, crossed with the barking of a very big dog. I froze my movements, and the dogman froze in place too. It was holding that object over its head, looking like it was going to throw it at us. For some reason that made me wonder if the object was possibly some kind of grenade. With the dogman backed up a ways, and both of us frozen in place, I was able to see for the first time that the creature had feet that were a whole lot more like human feet than canine feet. Its legs were not the hind legs of a dog as you so often talk about on your channel. This was more like a human being, wearing pants made of hair, with his nasty-looking calloused feet sticking out. The feet seemed to have toenails which were jagged and dangerous looking, but I don't think they were claws. Maybe they were, though. It's not like I got out of the station wagon with a flashlight and a magnifying lens to investigate. I want to pause here to talk about the thing he held in his hand. Marcy and I talked about this in an email series about a decade ago, I guess, and some people I've told the story to also had ideas about that object. One person asked if it might have been a microphone. I can't say that it wasn't. The top part was round, like a ball, not oval but perfectly circular. There are microphones made in that shape, I think. This appeared to have the same surface all over, though. The top part was the same texture as the stick part underneath that he was grasping. If there are mics that look like that, then possibly he might have been holding a microphone. He behaved as though it were a weapon of some sort, though. He never held it to his mouth, so if it was a mic, I don't think he knew it was. The creature never acted like anything but a scared and angry beast. I don't think it would have known what a microphone was if it did find one in the woods. Each time I would try to climb into the front seat, the dogman would get very agitated. Eventually I got the idea to slowly edge myself between Marcy and the back door. I was much larger than she was, and so I was able to hide her to a large extent behind me. I tossed pieces of chicken out of the back of the car. Then while the dogman was distracted, Marcy was able to sneak her way into the front seat. When she first gunned the engine, the creature man hopped up into the air in surprise. Marcy had this habit of gunning the engine a couple or 3 times before she put the car in gear. That was because this was an older car, and it would sometimes stall when you hit gas for the first time after starting up. I knew what she was doing made sense, but every second in that moment felt like a year. The dogman was only scared of the noise for 1 second, maybe 2. Then he came back down to earth and saw that mostly the situation had not changed. He was still looking in the back of an opened-up station wagon at a completely defenseless human being, namely me. The one change in the situation was that now the car engine was running, and soon this station wagon would be exiting Dogman Land and returning to the areas where human beings ran the show. So the only thing that had really changed was that now the Dogman realized if he was going to do something to me, it was a now or never situation. The creature leaned forward and appeared to be about to climb in the back of the vehicle interior. I screamed at Marcy to go, and she did. We lurched forward, and the beastman fell backward and onto the dirt and grass. Marcy put on the high beams and raced out of that forest faster than my nephew playing GTA. Out of the back I saw the Dogman getting up and pursuing us, but he seemed to have banged his knee on the open back hatch as Marcy hit the gas. He did pursue us on the dirt road, but he was limping, and when we pulled onto the main road, it seemed he let us go so he could attend to his own issues. This part of the story is why I'm pretty sure what we encountered was a living being, and that it was not a spirit or ghost or supernatural entity. I never heard of a ghost banging up his knee in the middle of a haunting. This creature didn't turn into an energy bubble and float away either, as in some Bigfoot stories I've heard. There might be supernatural Dogman out there, but if so, I don't think that's the kind we ran into. This was some kind of a beast that just happened to walk upright, like human beings do. I have no explanation for the weird object in his hand, and there were no explosions, so I doubt it was a grenade. One person suggested to me that it might have been a mushroom. His idea was that this was a shaman during a spiritual trip, brandishing his holy mushroom at me while he transformed into this mystical werewolf god form. Well, if that was a mushroom, it was an old and dry one, because it appeared very hard and solid and dark, whatever that thing was. And if this were a native holy man, he sure acted more like an animal than a human being. Just an animal that stood on two legs and carried this microphone-looking thing around, like he was going to start rapping or doing stand-up comedy. Marcy said it was probably just a big bolt or a screw that the creature found at some abandoned construction site in the woods, and that I shouldn't make it into a big mystery. But to me, everything was and still is a mystery concerning the Dogman with the thing in his hand. The Dogman caused our crash. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I'm one of your older viewers. I probably bring your ad revenue down, since I'm too old for most advertisers to even care about any longer. Since I can't afford to donate to your channel, I'd like to thank you for the hours of free entertainment you brought me by telling you my one and only cryptid story, which happens to be about the Dogman. At least, it was a dog-headed creature, and it stood like a man. At the time, I called it a weird Bigfoot to my friends that I could trust, and a weird bear to anyone else, including insurance. But it was the kind of animal or entity you talk about on your show. And I have to admit that to this day, I can't be certain if it all was an accident, or if that creature was intentionally trying to hurt me, or even end my life. I'll go through the details, which I admit still confuse me, and maybe you will have a better idea of what really happened to me on that day. So, my mother was nervous about driving out to the house I was renting in the country. I had gotten a job at a particular Midwestern university, and I found a house in a rural area located midway between the school and my mother, who I was still very close to in my young adulthood. I was her only child, and she was nervous about letting me go. So I was driving in my beat-up old used car, and she was in her 1966 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme that Dad had left her when he passed on. It was the hardtop version, not the convertible, but it was still too sporty for Mom. There was hardly any room in the back seat, so she couldn't drive more than one friend around with her, and the trunk seemed too small, in her opinion. It was new when my father bought it about 6 years prior, but he only got to enjoy it for around a year. Mom didn't even know how to drive until Dad passed and she started taking lessons. This is all important to understand. We were both inexperienced drivers who got behind the wheel as little as we could manage. Neither of us were comfortable driving, and this story starts out with me driving in front and Mom driving behind. It wasn't all that late, but it was a cloudy winter day. Not exactly overcast, as there were patches of blue in between the gray clouds. I know that's an odd fact to remember all these years later, but if it weren't for a sliver of light coming down from the sky diagonally, like a ray sent down from Olympus in an old painting, I wouldn't have even seen the Dogman running out in front of me, and the accident might have been one whole heck of a lot worse. Let's slow time down to a crawl, and then I can explain what happened in those next few seconds. The ray of light shining down from the heavens came from the upper left of my view down across the road I was driving on, and illuminated very brightly a certain patch of evergreen trees by the side of the road over there. It was a mostly barren forest covered in snow, but there were these few pine or fir trees, and the sun shone directly down onto them. Out from in between two of the trees walked a beast, taller than most men. It was colored like a polar bear, by which I mean it was a yellowed white color all over. The fur was white, I mean. The tip of the nose was black, like a dog's nose. It walked upright, bipedally, like you or me. I both hit the brakes, and I swerved left. I hit the car horn too, but I think I mostly did that to alert my mother to what was happening before she, too, crashed. And that's what I did. I crashed. I could go into detail about every second of that too, but the short version is that I lost control and I drove toward a tree that I must have hit. I don't remember the impact though. I woke up with grass in my mouth, face down on the ground. But other than a bloody nose and some painful bruises, I wasn't really hurt at all. I remembered that there had been an accident, but I was very confused as I came back to consciousness. My car was on fire, and the flames went very high. The big white Dogman was standing there, laughing at the situation, cackling like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. It was so creepy, like a deeper voiced version of a hyena. Now the way I remember it was that my 5-foot-tall mother was scolding the big Dogman, who was way bigger than I had originally thought. I still have a disjointed memory of her yelling at the beast while EMS arrived. My mother used to tell this story on holidays though, and she insists that EMS never showed up, and that she is the one who drove me to the hospital. But she said she did yell at the Dogman, and she did scare him off, not standing on the street and wagging her finger at him the way I must have hallucinated, but behind the wheel of her inherited sports car. Mom said she beeped her horn, which the Dogman did not like. Then she made a bluff charge at him like she was gonna run him over. After doing this a few times, the creature ran off into the woods and she was able to wake me up and get me to climb into her car. She insists that I got up and walked to her car, but I have no memory of any of that. Then she drove me to the hospital and reported the accident and the burning car from there. For my mother, this was in many ways a good thing to have happened. It helped her get past the passing of my father in a real sense and take control of her own life. She gained a lot more confidence in terms of driving and just in general. She and one of her friends opened up a yarn and sewing shop, and she was probably more active in her later years than she ever had been when she was young. The Dogman incident woke her up and was a positive occurrence for her. I would not say the same thing for myself, as this event sent me on a long downward spiral. I do need to mention that this was not just something that happened and that I moved past. It was an expensive setback in financial terms, but it seriously messed with my head and severely limited what I was able to do in my life. There were times when all I could do was work and sleep, but there were other times when I was forced to take a leave of absence from my job, which resulted in me eventually getting canned. I only saw the Dogman that one time, but it felt so personal, as though he had been sent to come directly after me, that it destroyed my idea of what my life was supposed to be about. I sort of felt like I was Sarah Connor in the first Terminator movie, but I wasn't even having the plotline explained to me. When the Terminator came after her, she got told why. I didn't understand why any of this had happened to me, and I didn't know if or when it might resume. It's been 50 years now, but I still have nightmares about it all starting up again. I had one nightmare, that I was being taken to the hospital in an ambulance. Then, I was driving the ambulance, and that same Dogman ran out on the road in front of me. The crash was the same. I could feel the impact. I could feel the heat from the fire. I don't remember them from the original, but I relive these sensations anyway. I recently lost my legal right to drive due to some of the side effects of my advancing age. You would think that would make the dreams go away, but no. I find myself behind the wheel of a car more and more often in my nightmares. And each time, that huge, white, canine monster man runs out at the worst possible turn in the road. And I know I'm gonna live through every horrible aspect again of the time that Dogman caused our crash. Don't even try to be as cool as him. I'm talking about Godzilla Tim. He's a pitcher and not a balker. From Ireland he comes, Godzilla Tim Walker. Please join me in thanking Godzilla Tim Walker, who just sent us a very generous New Year's present via our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. It came in a very odd amount, so he must have sent it in UK money. I should look up the exchange rate so I can understand better. It's an honor to be supported by such a cool guy as Godzilla Tim. He's a channel member and he donates on top of that. He goes so above and beyond the Call of Duty that we need to create a Hall of Fame for this very generous and kind man. Thank you, Godzilla Tim. You are one of the only reasons we're still online, and we want you to know that we owe a lot of our survival to you. Thank you, Godzilla Tim Walker, and I hope that 2023 is very good for you. And if the rest of you would like to be as cool as Mr. Walker, or get the free secret episodes he gets to watch, then check out what our spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman has to say about it. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.